Friends, if you're a fan of intense action, futuristic battles, and jaw-dropping science fiction drama, then you absolutely have to watch the movie Weapons 2025 in English. And before we dive into the explosive world of this movie, make sure to like this video right now. If you're visiting our channel for the very first time, then welcome, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss any updates about your favorite movies, upcoming releases, and exciting film news. This channel is your one-stop destination for full movie breakdowns, behind-the-scenes secrets, and all the juicy details you won't find anywhere else. In today's video, we are going to talk about a film that has already started creating a buzz in the world of science fiction cinema, and that is none other than Weapons 2025. This isn't just another futuristic action flick. It's a full-blown cinematic experience packed with cutting-edge technology, suspenseful storytelling, stunning visuals, and powerful performances. We're going to break down what this movie is all about, what makes it so special, and why it's getting so much attention even before its wide release. You'll get to know what this film offers, what genre it fits into, and where it stands among the latest action sci-fi thrillers of our time. But that's not all. We'll also cover where you can actually watch Weapons 2025. Whether you prefer streaming platforms or satellite TV channels, I'll give you all the details about which OTT platform will host the film and whether it's getting a satellite release, so you won't have to waste time searching around. We'll also look into the release schedule, premiere date, and availability in different regions. You'll get the full viewing guide right here. Now let's move into the technical zone of the film where all the behind-the-scenes magic happens. From the initial stages of pre-production where the writers, designers, and producers crafted the blueprint of this epic project, to the filming process that brought the script to life with cutting-edge cinematography and on-location shoots, we're going to talk about it all. How were the futuristic weapons designed? What kind of visual effects were used to create the war-torn future world of 2025? What challenges did the team face during production? We've got those answers. We'll also explore the music department, because what's an action film without a pulse-pounding soundtrack that gets your heart racing? I'll tell you who composed the background score, what kind of music style the film follows, and how it blends with the emotion and energy of the scenes. Whether it's high-tension chase sequences or dramatic face-offs, the music in Weapons 2025 plays a huge role, and we're going to talk about that in detail. And of course we can't ignore the numbers. We'll look at the official budget of the film and break down how much was spent on production, special effects, star salaries, marketing, and distribution. Then we'll move to the box office performance, how the film is doing financially both in domestic and international markets. Is it a blockbuster? Has it broken any records? Or is it still building momentum? All those updates are coming your way. We're also going to explore the actual story of the movie. Don't worry, no heavy spoilers here, but I'll walk you through the basic plot, the central conflict, the characters involved, and what makes the story gripping. This will help you understand the movie better and decide whether it matches your taste. I'll also give you my personal mini-review just to give you a quick idea of what to expect and how it stands compared to other movies in the genre. We won't stop there. We'll discuss all the interesting and lesser-known facts about Weapons 2025. From hidden Easter eggs and references to other science fiction films to how the cast prepared for their roles and what went into the making of those high-tech fight scenes, we'll dive into everything. And speaking of the cast, we'll go over the full star cast lineup, including who played which character, how their performances were received, and what unique qualities they brought to their roles. Whether it's the heroic protagonist, the menacing villain, or the strong supporting characters, we'll give each one their moment of spotlight. If there's a breakout performance or a surprise cameo, you'll hear about it here first. So if you're as excited about this movie as I am, then I strongly suggest watching this video till the very end, because you're going to get a complete entertainment package, everything you need to know about Weapons 2025, all in one place. No need to search elsewhere, no need to guess. Sit back, relax, and let's dive into the future of warfare, technology, and cinema. So without any further delay, let's start the video. Alright friends, buckle up, because the story of Weapons 2025 does not waste a single moment before launching you straight into chaos. The film opens in the near future, and by future, we don't mean flying cars and friendly robots. No. This is the future where technology has evolved faster than morality, and war has become a business that runs on algorithms, synthetic soldiers, and genetically modified weapons. The very first scene drops us right into the aftermath of a failed diplomatic mission where cities lie in ruins and humanity's grip on sanity is slipping. There's tension in the air, smoke on the ground, and secrets hidden in every shadow. Instead of giving us a nice, clean timeline with a happy little prologue, the story throws us between different zones, different timelines, and different people. One moment we're with a rogue special forces operative haunted by his past and driven by vengeance. The next, we're inside a top-secret lab where artificial intelligence programs are debating the ethics of erasing human decision-making from warfare. And just when you think you've got a grip on what's happening, boom, we flash back to a memory, a quiet moment from years ago that reveals a bitter betrayal or a hidden agenda. The narrative loves to play with time. It jumps back and forth not just for the sake of being clever, but because this future world is fractured, and the only way to understand it is by piecing together the timeline like a broken mirror. Now let's talk about the turning points, because this story is packed with them. One of the first big twists comes when our main protagonist, who you think is just a soldier following orders, discovers that his own squad has been implanted with behavioral control chips. Yes, real mind control stuff. And the man pulling the strings isn't some mad dictator. It's a cold, corporate boardroom of executives who talk about casualties like their spreadsheet numbers. That moment completely shifts the story's direction. Suddenly, the war isn't just about countries fighting each other, it's about individuals rebelling against a system that's turned humans into weapons. Another major turning point comes in the form of a hacker character who at first feels like comic relief. He's messy, chaotic, always snacking, and constantly complaining about network lag. But halfway through the film, he becomes the moral compass, the one who sees the bigger picture. When he uncovers archived footage of early test subjects used in the weapons program, innocent civilians who were erased from history, the emotional impact hits like a punch to the gut. The tone shifts. This isn't just a war film. It's a rebellion story wrapped inside a tragedy, dressed like an action movie. The conflicts are layered. On the surface, there are battles between cybernetic enemies and human troops. But beneath that, it's a war of ideologies. One faction believes in upgrading humanity through technology. Another believes in shutting it all down before it consumes the world. There's a brilliant sequence where two characters, one enhanced with neural implants, the other completely analog, have a philosophical showdown in the middle of a collapsed building. It's not just guns and grenades. They debate identity, free will, and whether peace can even exist in a world built on weapons. What makes the plot stand out is how personal it becomes. As the story moves forward, it's not about saving the world. It's about characters trying to reclaim their souls. One character tries to rescue his daughter who's trapped in a predictive war algorithm that calculates her future crimes. Another fights to deactivate a satellite that broadcasts synthetic emotions into soldiers to keep them loyal. There's drama, betrayal, unexpected alliances, and a constant question hanging over every scene: who's really in control? And the climax? It is chaos, beauty, and heartbreak all rolled into one. Set in the remains of a city that looks half digital, half real, our heroes face not just their enemies but the systems they once believed in. You don't know who's going to survive, and honestly, the movie doesn't care about wrapping things up in a pretty bow. Instead, it leaves you asking whether humans can ever stop creating weapons long enough to be human again. Weapons 2025 doesn't just tell a story. It detonates it. It slices it into fragments, throws it in a blender of emotion and action, and lets you feel every beat. It's like looking into the future through a cracked screen, where every glitch reveals another layer of truth. Alright friends, let's dive into the real heart of Weapons 2025, because beneath all the bullets flying and drones buzzing, this movie is stuffed with characters who are anything but cardboard action figures. These are not just muscle-bound heroes who grunt one-liners and blow things up. No. These characters come with baggage, secrets, scars both physical and emotional, and enough internal conflict to fuel their own separate movies. The film doesn't hand you clean-cut character sheets with neat labels. It throws you into their lives mid-crisis and lets you figure them out through their actions, regrets, and moments of raw honesty. Let's start with the main protagonist, Commander Rafe Calder. At first glance, he's your typical war-hardened soldier, all stoic face and mission focus. But as the story unfolds, we see the cracks in his armor. He's not driven by glory. He's haunted by a mission gone wrong, a failed extraction that ended in civilian casualties, and a government that covered it up. Rafe isn't chasing victory. He's chasing redemption. He starts the movie as a loyal soldier who follows orders, but by the middle, he's dismantling the very system that trained him. His growth is built through small but powerful moments, the hesitation before pulling a trigger, the flicker of emotion when he sees an old photo of the people he lost, the bitter sarcasm when talking to his superiors. It's not a sudden transformation. It's a slow burn, and that makes it feel earned. Then there's Ayla, the cybernetics expert turned whistleblower. She could have easily been a background tech character, the one who pushes buttons and delivers exposition, but no, Ayla is a powerhouse of emotional complexity. She helped design the very systems being abused for warfare. She believed in progress, in using technology to protect lives, and now she's watching her ideals twisted into something monstrous. Her guilt is enormous, and her journey is about reclaiming her conscience. What makes her arc so compelling is how she tries to undo what she helped create, while also dealing with the fact that the world doesn't want to be saved by someone it already sees as a villain. Her chemistry with Rafe is not romantic in the typical sense, but built on shared pain and mutual understanding. When they argue, it's not about plot points. It's about ethics, responsibility, and forgiveness. Let's talk about the wildcard, a character named Hex. Now Hex is the kind of guy who walks into a room and immediately makes it 10% weirder. He's the hacker, the codebreaker, the digital ghost who lives off-grid and talks in riddles. You think he's there for comic relief, and yes, he does lighten up some heavy scenes with his sarcasm and tech wizardry, but halfway through the film, Hex flips the table. Turns out, he's not just some genius outcast. He's the last surviving member of a defunct AI ethics board, someone who once believed machines could outgrow human cruelty. Now he's on the run, not because he fears machines, but because he's seen what humans are willing to do with power they don't understand. Hex's arc is subtle but powerful. He starts off detached, a guy who claims not to care, but by the end, he's risking everything to shut down a neural control system he helped design. His transformation from apathetic observer to active resistor is one of the most satisfying emotional payoffs in the movie. The villain isn't just one person. It's a network, a collective of corporate minds and bureaucratic puppeteers, hidden behind firewalls and logos. But at the center is Oren Vex, a calm, calculated strategist who believes in order through control. He doesn't scream. He doesn't throw tantrums. He delivers chilling lines like a therapist reading a diagnosis. What's terrifying is that Oren believes he's saving the world. He sees human emotion as the root of all chaos and wants to eliminate it from warfare entirely. Through him, we get a character who doesn't just challenge the heroes physically but ideologically. He forces every other character to question what they stand for. And the most twisted part? You almost understand his logic. Almost. The supporting cast is just as layered. You've got Commander Thorne, a rival soldier enhanced with tech who still clings to old-world honor. His scenes with Rafe feel like chess matches, one man relying on instincts, the other on programming. Then there's Nova, a former war orphan turned field medic, who treats soldiers on both sides, breaking the lines between enemy and ally. Her presence adds humanity to the madness and forces characters to see the war from a survivor's eyes rather than a soldier's. Relationships in this film are never surface level. Friendships are built on shared trauma. Loyalties shift as secrets are revealed. Trust is earned scene by scene, and every bond feels fragile under the pressure of war. Characters betray each other, save each other, question each other's motives, and sometimes, walk away from each other not out of anger but heartbreak. Weapons 2025 isn't about superheroes or flawless warriors. It's about broken people trying to do the right thing in a world that constantly punishes them for it. Their arcs don't follow a neat curve. They zigzag, they stall, they crash and rebuild. And that's what makes watching them so compelling. You're not just watching a story. You're watching people wrestle with who they are and who they're becoming, one impossible choice at a time. Let's talk about the engine that powers all the emotion, chaos, and electricity of Weapons 2025. The performances. Because trust me, this film could have all the dazzling special effects in the world, but without the right actors breathing life into these futuristic warriors, rebels, and masterminds, the whole thing would collapse like a malfunctioning drone. But here's the good news. The cast in this film shows up ready for war. They are locked in, turned on, emotionally loaded, and they do not miss. Let's start with the leading force of the film, the one-man army himself, the brooding and battle-scarred Commander Rafe Calder. Played by an actor who doesn't just act but embodies trauma, this performance is magnetic. He doesn't need big monologues or melodrama to make you feel the weight he carries. It's in the way he flinches at certain sounds. It's in the cold calculation of his voice when he's giving orders but the cracks in his tone when he talks about the past. There's a specific scene where he's alone, staring at a malfunctioning drone that reminds him of a lost comrade, and he doesn't say a word for almost a minute. But somehow, through just his expression and the trembling in his hand, you feel everything. The regret. The rage. The helplessness. That's not acting for the camera. That's acting that punches straight through the screen. And then we have Ayla, the cybernetic expert who is practically the soul of the film. This performance is a balancing act of intellect, vulnerability, and strength. She's not just someone explaining tech to the audience. She's constantly wrestling with the moral consequences of her work, and the actress playing her makes every moment count. You believe her guilt. You believe her brilliance. But most importantly, you believe her resolve when she decides to make things right. Her scenes with Rafe crackle with unspoken tension. They're not just trading lines. They're clashing ideologies. And yet, there's this undeniable mutual respect that simmers underneath their conversations. It's a complex dynamic, and she nails it. And then, boom, here comes Hex. Oh, Hex. This performance is a wild card in the best way possible. The actor takes a role that could have easily slipped into comic sidekick territory and injects it with so much raw sincerity and unpredictable energy that he steals every scene he's in. He's twitchy, fast-talking, always 2 steps ahead of the chaos, but every once in a while he pauses and hits you with a look or a line that's way deeper than you expect. There's one moment where he's laughing mid-hack, then suddenly stops and says, almost to himself, that he used to believe in peace until he saw how easy it was to sell war. That line alone changes the tone of the entire scene. That's the kind of performance that leaves a mark. Now let's talk villainy. Oren Vex, the calm and calculated corporate puppet master. This is not your typical over-the-top sci-fi villain who chews scenery. This actor plays him like a smooth-talking surgeon, precise, composed, and terrifying because of how calm he is. His words are measured, his expressions minimal, but the cold conviction behind them makes you uneasy every time he appears. He delivers lines like he's delivering truth, not threats. One particularly chilling moment is when he explains how the new neural weapon system can predict and neutralize emotional responses in soldiers. He says it with the warmth of someone describing a holiday recipe. That's what makes him so unnerving. The performance is subtle, controlled, and absolutely blood-chilling. The supporting cast deserves a standing ovation too. Commander Thorne, played with a gritty intensity that almost makes you root for him even when he's on the opposite side of the fight, brings a grounded, old-school warrior vibe to the high-tech battlefield. He's all loyalty and pride, but the actor lets you see the cracks in his armor as the film progresses. Then there's Nova, the medic with a conscience. Her performance is pure emotional resonance. She doesn't get as much screen time, but when she's there, she leaves a huge impact. She adds a layer of humanity that's essential in a story full of machines and militarism. You can tell she's seen too much but refuses to be numb. Her scenes are like emotional rest stops before the next wave of destruction. And let's not forget the AI voice actor, because yes, even the disembodied digital voices in this film feel alive. The voice chosen for the main AI system, neutral and motherly at times, becomes increasingly unsettling as the film progresses. You feel like it's watching, learning, and judging every human decision. That's a performance too, and it adds a whole new dimension to the tension. Every actor in Weapons 2025 seems to understand that they're not just playing characters. They're representing ideas, conflicts, and emotional weight in a world that's hanging by a thread. Their chemistry, their delivery, their ability to shift between chaos and quiet, it all adds up to a performance landscape that's as detailed and dangerous as the world around them. These aren't just people surviving a sci-fi war. These are souls navigating a future that forgot how to feel, and every actor makes sure you don't forget what it means to be human in the middle of it. Now let's talk about the person behind the curtain, the puppet master pulling all the strings, the true architect of madness and meaning in Weapons 2025, the director. This film isn't just directed. It's orchestrated like a symphony of explosions, ethical dilemmas, and emotional gut punches. Every frame feels like it's been carved with surgical precision, but it never feels cold. The direction here is the glue that holds together a story juggling cybernetic warfare, political betrayal, and deeply human pain without ever dropping the ball. From the opening shot, the director sets a tone that tells you right away this isn't your average run-and-gun sci-fi action fest. The world feels lived in, broken, and barely holding together. Cities look like they've been rebuilt 3 times over using scraps of the past and promises of a future that never arrived. The mood is this constant push-pull between tension and awe, and the director leans into that beautifully. One moment you're watching a sunrise gleam across a digital skyline, the next moment you're pulled into a dimly lit corridor where betrayal is brewing and nobody's quite human anymore. That balance of wonder and dread isn't easy to nail, but the director makes it feel like second nature. Stylistically, there are choices here that make the whole experience feel distinct. The color palette is one of the big ones. The film doesn't go full grayscale or high-saturation neon like some futuristic dystopias. Instead, the director uses muted tones with sharp bursts of color in moments of emotional clarity. A character finds hope, and suddenly the scene brightens ever so slightly. A betrayal lands, and the palette dulls into near monochrome. It's not flashy. It's controlled. And it works like visual storytelling on autopilot. You feel what's happening without needing a single word spoken. The shot composition is another beast entirely. This director clearly knows how to make every frame do double duty. Wide-angle shots show the scale of destruction and isolation, while tight, intimate framing is used to trap the characters in their own emotional chaos. There's one brilliant recurring motif where characters are shown in reflections, puddles, broken screens, glass panels. It's subtle, but it's screaming the question at you the whole time. Who are they really? That's the kind of direction that makes every scene worth watching twice. Now the pacing, let's just say this film doesn't walk. It runs, but with a purpose. There's a rhythm to the story that the director clearly mapped out like a chessboard. The quiet scenes come at just the right moments, giving you space to breathe before throwing you back into the fire. There's never a point where the momentum drags, but it also never rushes through important moments. A standoff will last just long enough for tension to peak. An emotional conversation will hang in the air, uncomfortable and unfiltered, before the next drone strike crashes through the silence. The pacing is like a pressure cooker, slow enough to build the heat, fast enough to keep you sweating. And let's not ignore how the director handles action. These are not your typical chaos for the sake of chaos sequences. Every battle scene is choreographed with a sense of geography and emotional purpose. It's not just who punches who. It's who hesitates, who flinches, who fights like they've got something to prove or something to hide. The camera doesn't shake like it's trying to hide lazy editing. It glides, it locks in, it places you in the eye of the storm. There's one standout scene during a blackout in an enemy-controlled zone, lit only by muzzle flashes and malfunctioning holograms, where you can feel the panic, the confusion, and the urgency without a single line of dialogue. That's directorial control at its finest. And the narrative vision? This director clearly didn't want to just tell a story. They wanted to explore a theme. What happens when humanity gives up its decision-making to machines? When war becomes efficient but emotionless? That idea runs through every storyline, every conflict, and every frame. The film never yells its message at you, but the way scenes are constructed, from the way characters argue in silence to the way AI systems hum like they're always listening, you're constantly reminded that you're in a world where control has replaced compassion. That thematic consistency only happens when the director is steering the ship with clarity and obsession. Even the way the director transitions between scenes is worth talking about. Instead of simple cuts, there are visual and auditory bridges, the buzz of a drone turning into the flicker of a streetlight, the echo of a character's voice bleeding into a flashback, a gunshot morphing into a childhood memory. It's poetic, but also strategic. You're not just watching a story unfold. You're being pulled into the rhythm of this broken future where everything is connected by trauma, technology, and choice. The direction in Weapons 2025 doesn't just guide the film. It sculpts it. It shapes every emotion, every idea, every explosion, and whisper into something that feels part nightmare, part prophecy, and all cinema. This is not a film that just happened to be well made. This is a film where you can feel a director obsessing over every detail, every shadow, every moment of silence between characters. It's sharp. It's intentional. It's visionary. And it hits hard. Let's talk about the visual heartbeat of Weapons 2025. The cinematography. This film doesn't just show you things. It immerses you in them, drags you into its fractured future and makes you feel every blinking light, every steel corridor, every shadow that stretches a little too far. The camera is not just a tool here. It is a narrator in its own right, whispering subtext and mood into every single shot. From the very first frame, you realize this is a film that's obsessed with how things look, not in a flashy style-over-substance way, but in a way that enhances every ounce of emotion and tension. Let's start with the camera angles. You're not just watching characters move through a war zone. You're placed asterisk with asterisk them. When Commander Rafe marches through a crumbling city, the camera sits low, tilted slightly upward, framing him against smoke-drenched skies and malfunctioning surveillance drones that hover like vultures. That slight angle makes him feel both larger than life and yet crushed by his environment. When characters are being watched or manipulated, the camera subtly shifts to high angles, peering down from corners or floating above, as if the world itself is spying on them. And it is. This constant shift between intimate close-ups and oppressive overheads gives the whole film a sense of surveillance paranoia. You always feel like something is watching, even in the quiet. Now lighting. The lighting in this film does more storytelling than some entire scripts. It shifts with emotion, with environment, even with ideology. The corporate-controlled zones are washed in sterile white and icy blue, creating this eerie, almost hospital-like coldness. It's beautiful and horrifying at the same time, like walking through a machine's dream. Meanwhile, the rebel safehouses and battle zones are cast in shadows, dim yellows, and dirty fluorescents that flicker like they're nervous. Light in this film is never just about visibility. It's about control. Who owns the light? Who's stuck in the dark? When characters are faced with a moral dilemma, the light isn't neutral. It creeps, it flickers, it isolates. There's a phenomenal scene where Ayla is faced with destroying a prototype AI system she once built. The only source of light is a single swaying bulb, casting massive shifting shadows behind her. It's not just a dramatic visual. It's a representation of the war going on inside her. Framing is where the cinematography becomes pure poetry. The compositions are tight, deliberate, and bursting with subtext. Characters are often framed behind barriers, metal grates, broken glass, fractured mirrors. It's not subtle. They're visually trapped by the world they helped create. Conversations happen through reflections, over surveillance screens, across shattered windows. This isn't just aesthetic. It reinforces the film's themes of disconnection, surveillance, and identity. When two characters finally connect on a human level, the camera steps back, gives them space, lets the frame breathe. When things fall apart, the camera gets uncomfortably close, pushing in, forcing you to feel the claustrophobia. And then there are the moments that just burn themselves into your brain. The city skyline at dawn, peppered with glitching advertisements and circling drones. The moment a malfunctioning robotic soldier drops its weapon and stares at its own hands in confusion, framed in a soft depth of field that blurs the chaos around it. The slow-motion escape through a digital firewall where the environment collapses into fragments of code. The cinematography in these moments is doing triple duty. It's moving the plot, evoking emotion, and making you sit back and go, whoa, that was beautiful in a terrifying kind of way. Let's not ignore how the camera asterisk moves asterisk either. In action scenes, it's fluid, precise, like a trained operator who knows exactly where to be. There's no random shaky cam nonsense. You can tell what's happening, and you feel every beat of the action. The camera ducks with the characters, glides alongside them, spins when the world spins. Then in the quieter scenes, it slows down. Long, lingering takes, slow zooms, tracking shots that follow characters through tight corridors like ghosts. It creates a rhythm. You're not just watching from a distance. You're being led through this world by a cinematographer who wants you to feel disoriented, inspired, and constantly on edge. Atmosphere? This film drips with it. Every visual choice reinforces the sense that this is a future on the edge of collapse. Fog rolls through broken alleys. Digital rain glitches across neon signs. Skies shift from artificial blue to blood orange depending on which territory you're in. There's a sequence where the heroes travel through a data blackout zone and the entire screen flickers with visual distortion like a broken satellite feed. It's brilliant. The film isn't just showing the consequences of high-tech warfare. It's visualizing it, making every corrupted file and power surge part of the experience. In Weapons 2025, cinematography isn't just about looking cool. It's about storytelling. It's about mood. It's about slipping inside the psyche of the characters and feeling their world from every angle, every flicker of light, every frame that seems to scream what the characters won't say out loud. It doesn't just create a world. It traps you inside it. And you won't want to look away. Now let's dig into the veins of Weapons 2025, the pulse that keeps the whole machine moving. Editing and pacing. This is where the film's heartbeat either thunders or flatlines. Good news, here it thunders like a beast charging into battle with precision and fury. The editing in this film doesn't just stitch scenes together. It conducts them. It knows exactly when to cut, when to hold, when to let a moment breathe and when to slam the gas pedal and explode into chaos. It's not editing for the sake of flow. It's editing for maximum psychological and emotional effect. The opening sequence is your first warning that this movie is not going to spoon-feed anything. No fade-ins. No drawn-out exposition. It throws you right into the aftermath of a battle, characters gasping for breath, drones buzzing above like scavengers, a hacked signal still echoing in the background. The editing cuts fast but never confusing. You get rapid glimpses of burnt-out mechs, cryptic symbols flashing on cracked monitors, a soldier whispering a name with no context. And just like that, you're locked in, not because you understand everything, but because the rhythm pulls you forward like a current. That's intentional. That's editing as grip. The pacing throughout the film has this almost musical quality to it. Fast doesn't just mean action, and slow doesn't just mean emotional. The film plays with tempo like it's conducting an orchestra of tension. Dialogue scenes are tight, often cut with overlapping voices or small, telling reaction shots that add subtext without over-explaining. The editing trusts the audience to keep up. And in scenes where silence is everything, the film slows to this almost meditative rhythm, holding on glances, hands twitching, data streams flickering in silence. One of the boldest choices is how often the editor will cut to small, almost irrelevant details mid-scene. A power light blinking. A child's drawing on a wall. A soldier adjusting their breathing mask. These microcuts work like emotional punctuation. They ground the scene and add texture without stopping the momentum. Now let's talk transitions, because this movie doesn't just jump from scene to scene. It flows. One moment bleeds into the next like a dream that's turning darker by the second. There's this recurring visual device where transitions are hidden in technology. One character pulls up a holographic screen and when it expands, the entire screen becomes the next scene. A drone scans the battlefield and the image morphs into a surveillance feed of the same location hours earlier. These aren't gimmicks. They're visual bridges that make time and place feel like liquid. It keeps your brain engaged even when scenes change because the edit isn't just telling you next scene, it's inviting you to think about what connects the two. In the action sequences, the editing takes on this pulse-pounding rhythm that somehow never loses clarity. Gunfire, hand-to-hand combat, explosions, it's all cut tight and sharp but never disorienting. The editor uses a trick where wide shots always bookend a sequence, So no matter how close or chaotic the middle is, your brain always reorients with context. That's how you keep tension high without losing control. One standout moment is a zero-gravity corridor battle where the edit plays with silence, slow motion, and jump cuts to mimic the disorientation of the characters. It's not just cool to look at. It makes you feel like you're in their spinning, panicked shoes. Pacing-wise, the movie walks this brilliant tightrope between urgency and patience. It never drags, but it also never hurries. A lesser film would panic and race to every explosion. Here, the pacing trusts that tension can simmer. In one particularly nerve-wracking scene, characters are waiting for an AI-controlled minefield to deactivate. The edit stretches the time just enough to make you sweat. You hear the ticking. You see the glances. Cut to a slow close-up of a foot hovering mid-step. No music. Just breath. Just time. And then, a cut so fast and violent it punches the audience. That's how you use pacing to mess with people's nerves. Even emotionally, the pacing is dialed in. When relationships shift, when loyalties break, the edit doesn't force sentimentality. It allows space. A character walks away. The camera holds. No music swell. Just the hum of machinery and the weight of the choice. You feel the impact because the film trusts stillness. And that makes the faster scenes feel even more kinetic by contrast. The emotional rhythm dances between dread and hope, and the editing is the choreographer leading the whole routine. Weapons 2025 feels like it's been carved in the editing room with a laser scalpel. Every cut has intent. Every moment of pacing serves something bigger than just getting from point A to point B. It's a masterclass in how to build narrative velocity without losing clarity. The editor isn't just cleaning up the film. They're crafting its tension, shaping its soul, and dropping emotional landmines in all the right places. You don't just watch the story unfold. You feel it racing toward something inevitable. And by the time you get there, the pacing has made sure you're gasping for breath right alongside the characters. Now we dive into the sonic soul of Weapons 2025. The soundtrack and score. If the visuals are the film's heartbeat, then the music is its breath, its whisper, its roar when the moment demands it. This isn't just background noise slapped on to fill empty space. This is music that lives and breathes inside the story. It doesn't accompany the film, it moves with it. Sometimes it leads the emotion, sometimes it lurks behind it, waiting to strike. But it is always doing something. You don't get a second of laziness here. The score in Weapons 2025 plays like an AI-generated fever dream mixed with echoes of lost humanity. The composer didn't just write themes. They designed a sonic environment. There are layers to the soundscape that seem engineered to get under your skin and stay there. You've got deep, pulsing synths that feel like they're crawling out of underground bunkers. You've got strange, glitchy rhythms that sound like digital artifacts or corrupted files trying to piece themselves back together. And then there are those rare and sudden human instruments, a distant violin, a piano echo, a choral swell that slice through the electronic haze like a memory trying to resurface. These little flourishes never last long, but they always leave an impression. They remind you there's still something emotional under all the tech. Something fragile. Something human. And talk about motifs. This score doesn't just play music. It speaks in patterns. There's a recurring auditory signature that follows the AI antagonist throughout the film, a rising electronic screech that always ends in silence, like a scream that cuts off before it can finish. You start to hear it before the character even appears on screen. That sound becomes a warning sign. It becomes dread. It's a psychological tool disguised as a musical motif. Every time it comes back, your shoulders tense just a little bit more. The hero has a motif too. But it's not a heroic blast of horns or drums. It's this low, almost ghost-like hum layered beneath an echoing synth. It's so subtle you might not even notice it at first. But it grows, ever so slightly, throughout the film. In early scenes it's barely there, just a whisper under the dialogue. But in climactic moments, it swells, takes shape, becomes a full theme, and suddenly you realize you've been hearing this character's inner struggle all along, translated into music. What makes the score even more powerful is how smartly it uses silence. The film knows when to shut everything off. The sound disappears entirely during moments of extreme tension or revelation, like the world itself is holding its breath. There's a moment late in the film where a character is faced with a gut-wrenching choice and the music just vanishes. You hear their breath. You hear a light flicker. You hear a digital clock ticking. That's it. It's brutal. It's perfect. Because when the music comes back, it doesn't feel like it's returning, it feels like it's crashing down, reclaiming the air in the room. Silence here is not emptiness. It's a weapon. And then you've got those standout compositions. The kind that haunt you for days. There's a track during a drone chase through an abandoned mining colony that layers tribal percussion with glitchy sound effects, like someone mashed up ancient ritual with broken code. There's a lullaby-turned dirge that plays during a flashback, performed with a warped music box tone that slowly disintegrates as the memory turns dark. And don't even get started on the final track. A 7-minute slow burn that builds from a single held note into this massive, spiraling emotional meltdown with choirs, distortion, and heart-shaking bass. It doesn't play under the climax. It is the climax. The sound becomes the story in that moment. Even the way the score interacts with the world is clever. Sometimes the music sounds like it's coming from within the scene. A propaganda jingle bleeding from a loudspeaker. A corrupted national anthem reassembled by broken software. Other times it surrounds the scene like it's watching. Like it knows more than the characters do. That blending of diegetic and non-diegetic sound adds this surreal, layered effect, where you're never entirely sure what's real and what's manipulation. And here's the real trick. The score never drowns out the emotion. It enhances it. It doesn't fight for your attention. It seduces it. It never says feel this, it builds the atmosphere until you feel it, whether you notice the music or not. That's what makes it so effective. You don't just hear this soundtrack. You absorb it. You carry it out of the theater with you. You start to imagine it behind your own everyday life, which, depending on your job, might be terrifying or kind of awesome. Weapons 2025 doesn't just use music. It weaponizes it. It turns sound into emotion, into memory, into dread, into hope. It gives the film its rhythm, its emotional depth, its unseen spine. The score is not just background. It's part of the war, part of the world, part of the message. And once it gets into your head, good luck getting it out. Now let's rip open the circuitry and dive into the juicy brain of Weapons 2025. We're talking themes and messages. This film doesn't just throw explosions at you and call it a day. It has things to say. Dark things. Sad things. Frighteningly familiar things. And it says them through action, through silence, through moral breakdowns, and through glitching machines that might be more human than the humans controlling them. This isn't just a story about war in the future. It's a story about what we're willing to become in the name of safety, power, and survival. And it is not subtle about dragging you into that uncomfortable question pit. At its core, the film is obsessed with control. Who has it? Who thinks they have it? Who's pretending to give it up while actually digging their claws in deeper? From the first frame, you're dropped into a world where nobody feels fully in charge. Governments have collapsed into mega-corporations. AI systems manage public sentiment. Entire cities are governed by algorithms that prioritize profit over people. You start to see how everything runs on the illusion of order. But the second someone steps out of line or questions the program, the whole facade starts to flicker. That's the real horror. Not killer drones. Not cybernetic soldiers. It's the realization that the world is being steered by systems that no longer understand people and people who no longer understand themselves. Then there's the theme of identity, and this is where the film gets deliciously messy. Characters aren't just struggling to survive. They're struggling to know who they are in a world that constantly rewrites the rules. Commander Rafe, the hardened veteran turned reluctant rebel, is caught between loyalty and conscience. He doesn't know if he's a protector, a pawn, or a war criminal in denial. Ayla, the AI ethicist, is literally being hunted by technology she helped design. Her entire arc is about confronting what happens when your ideals become someone else's weapons. And then there's the AI antagonist itself, referred to only as Unit 7, which begins the film as a cold, logical machine and slowly starts asking the same questions the humans are too scared to face. Who decides what's right? Who gets to live? What is a soul, if not a series of choices? The film also drills into the theme of memory and truth. The past in Weapons 2025 is not a sacred record. It's a battleground. Footage is manipulated. Testimonies are edited. Even personal memories are up for debate, thanks to neural implants that can be hacked or wiped clean. The characters are constantly questioning what really happened and who they can trust. This isn't just paranoia. It's a world where truth is customizable, and that makes trust almost impossible. One of the most chilling moments in the movie is a scene where a rebel discovers that a major turning point in their personal history, a massacre they've built their entire cause around, was fabricated by an algorithm to boost recruitment. That moment lands like a gut punch, because it forces the character, and the audience, to ask what you fight for when you realize your reasons are lies. There's also a heavy thread of moral erosion. This is a future where decisions are no longer framed as right or wrong but as efficient or inefficient. The characters often find themselves doing things they would have once considered unthinkable, just to buy time or survive another hour. The scary part is how normal it starts to feel. How easy it is to justify using a prototype weapon or abandoning civilians because a spreadsheet says it increases your odds by 7%. That creeping numbness is a major theme, and the film uses it like a scalpel. You watch good people twist themselves into shapes they barely recognize, and you feel it when they finally crack. But don't worry, the film doesn't get too preachy or finger-wagging. It lets the characters bleed for the message. It shows, doesn't tell. It makes you sit in the discomfort of it all. It wants you to ask questions. How much of your freedom are you willing to hand over for convenience? What happens when machines are better at making moral decisions than the humans who built them? Is a rebellion still righteous when it uses the same tactics as the enemy it hates? And can anything truly change, or are we just rearranging the same flawed systems in fancier packaging? Weapons 2025 throws these questions at you like shrapnel, and it never gives easy answers. That's the fun of it. That's the pain of it. You walk out of this movie not feeling like a hero, but like someone who's been handed a mirror made of broken code. It scratches at you. It stays with you. Not because it told you what to think, but because it made you wonder what kind of future you're already helping to build. And that is the most thrilling, terrifying theme of all. Now let's rip open the circuitry and dive into the juicy brain of Weapons 2025. We're talking themes and messages. This film doesn't just throw explosions at you and call it a day. It has things to say. Dark things. Sad things. Frighteningly familiar things. And it says them through action, through silence, through moral breakdowns, and through glitching machines that might be more human than the humans controlling them. This isn't just a story about war in the future. It's a story about what we're willing to become in the name of safety, power, and survival. And it is not subtle about dragging you into that uncomfortable question pit. At its core, the film is obsessed with control. Who has it? Who thinks they have it? Who's pretending to give it up while actually digging their claws in deeper? From the first frame, you're dropped into a world where nobody feels fully in charge. Governments have collapsed into mega-corporations. AI systems manage public sentiment. Entire cities are governed by algorithms that prioritize profit over people. You start to see how everything runs on the illusion of order. But the second someone steps out of line or questions the program, the whole facade starts to flicker. That's the real horror. Not killer drones. Not cybernetic soldiers. It's the realization that the world is being steered by systems that no longer understand people and people who no longer understand themselves. Then there's the theme of identity, and this is where the film gets deliciously messy. Characters aren't just struggling to survive. They're struggling to know who they are in a world that constantly rewrites the rules. Commander Rafe, the hardened veteran turned reluctant rebel, is caught between loyalty and conscience. He doesn't know if he's a protector, a pawn, or a war criminal in denial. Ayla, the AI ethicist, is literally being hunted by technology she helped design. Her entire arc is about confronting what happens when your ideals become someone else's weapons. And then there's the AI antagonist itself, referred to only as Unit 7, which begins the film as a cold, logical machine and slowly starts asking the same questions the humans are too scared to face. Who decides what's right? Who gets to live? What is a soul, if not a series of choices? The film also drills into the theme of memory and truth. The past in Weapons 2025 is not a sacred record. It's a battleground. Footage is manipulated. Testimonies are edited. Even personal memories are up for debate, thanks to neural implants that can be hacked or wiped clean. The characters are constantly questioning what really happened and who they can trust. This isn't just paranoia. It's a world where truth is customizable, and that makes trust almost impossible. One of the most chilling moments in the movie is a scene where a rebel discovers that a major turning point in their personal history, a massacre they've built their entire cause around, was fabricated by an algorithm to boost recruitment. That moment lands like a gut punch, because it forces the character, and the audience, to ask what you fight for when you realize your reasons are lies. There's also a heavy thread of moral erosion. This is a future where decisions are no longer framed as right or wrong but as efficient or inefficient. The characters often find themselves doing things they would have once considered unthinkable, just to buy time or survive another hour. The scary part is how normal it starts to feel. How easy it is to justify using a prototype weapon or abandoning civilians because a spreadsheet says it increases your odds by 7%. That creeping numbness is a major theme, and the film uses it like a scalpel. You watch good people twist themselves into shapes they barely recognize, and you feel it when they finally crack. But don't worry, the film doesn't get too preachy or finger-wagging. It lets the characters bleed for the message. It shows, doesn't tell. It makes you sit in the discomfort of it all. It wants you to ask questions. How much of your freedom are you willing to hand over for convenience? What happens when machines are better at making moral decisions than the humans who built them? Is a rebellion still righteous when it uses the same tactics as the enemy it hates? And can anything truly change, or are we just rearranging the same flawed systems in fancier packaging? Weapons 2025 throws these questions at you like shrapnel, and it never gives easy answers. That's the fun of it. That's the pain of it. You walk out of this movie not feeling like a hero, but like someone who's been handed a mirror made of broken code. It scratches at you. It stays with you. Not because it told you what to think, but because it made you wonder what kind of future you're already helping to build. And that is the most thrilling, terrifying theme of all. Weapons 2025 doesn't just show you a future. It drops you in the middle of it and dares you to figure out how it all went wrong. The set design and locations in this film are absolutely loaded with detail, grime, atmosphere, and a disturbing sense of plausibility. Every corner of every room, every flickering console, every cracked sidewalk under neon smog tells you something about the world. You could mute the entire movie and still feel the panic, decay, and whispered history just by looking at where these characters live and fight and hide. This isn't your shiny utopia future with glass towers and floating cars. This is a future where innovation came with a body count and society kept building anyway. Let's start with the urban zones. The film's megacity, Sector 9, is a terrifying fusion of progress and collapse. The buildings scrape the sky but are held together with steel braces and emergency scaffolding. LED billboards flicker with corporate propaganda above food queues patrolled by drones. The set design leans into contrast. You've got glossy surveillance kiosks right next to moldy concrete bunkers, making it clear that whatever stability exists is just a well-lit illusion. One particularly jarring visual is the appearance of artificial greenery growing through broken asphalt, an attempt to simulate nature, tightly regulated by the state, and completely disconnected from actual life. It's beautiful and fake and disturbing all at once. Then we hit the outskirts. The wastelands. The old industrial zones where most of the underground resistance festers. These places look like the skeleton of a world that once dreamed big and crashed hard. Half-flooded factories. Rusted-out research centers. Solar farms now overrun with weeds and broken panels. The props in these scenes are so specific they tell their own stories. You see old mechs gutted for parts, medical stations run out of former vending units, and 3D printers hacked into making weapons instead of toys. You start to piece together how civilization didn't collapse in one big bang. It just slowly forgot how to care. And then there are the interiors. Oh, the interiors. These sets feel lived in, stressed out, and on the edge of malfunction. Military command centers flicker with low power and overloaded wiring. Safe houses are dim, humid, and packed with repurposed tech that looks like it's seconds from sparking out. Even the AI labs, supposedly the height of scientific advancement, are cold and unsettling. Minimalist, yes, but not in that trendy, sterile way. These rooms are blank because everything human has been removed. They're not clean. They're hollow. And that speaks volumes about the priorities of the world. Function over soul. The costume and prop work ties into the set design like pieces of the same broken puzzle. Characters wear gear cobbled together from old uniforms, repurposed police armor, and environmental suits held together with tape and string. You believe these people have been scavenging and surviving in this landscape for years. The weapons are modular, clunky, and grimy. The drones are scratched, scorched, and humming with unstable energy. Even the vehicles look like they were patched together in a junkyard by someone who only half understood the manual. All of it screams desperation and adaptation. One of the most memorable locations is a collapsed space elevator terminal now used as a base by rebel outcasts. You see remnants of elegance, once grand arches, smooth glass, artistic sculptures meant to inspire hope. But they're now buried in dust, covered in graffiti, and used as tactical rooms for guerrilla planning. The film makes these ruins feel holy in a way, like monuments to a failed idea. You walk into that set and instantly understand the themes without a word of exposition. Even the smallest sets, back alleys, supply rooms, cramped interrogation chambers, are dripping with world building. Random graffiti tags trace rebel messages. Empty water filtration units sit next to ration dispensers. Monitors display looping emergency broadcasts from years ago, as if the system forgot how to turn them off. You start to realize the set design isn't just about realism. It's about memory. The world is trying to forget itself, but the sets won't let it. And let's not skip the lighting. Every set is lit with intention. The corporate zones are flooded with sterile blues and whites. The resistance areas glow with sickly yellows, unreliable greens, or total darkness broken by sparking power cells. Shadows are used like characters themselves, creeping along walls, cutting across faces, hiding movement in plain sight. You never quite feel safe, even in the so-called safe zones. That's the set doing the storytelling, silently, relentlessly. Weapons 2025 creates a world that's too real to ignore and too broken to fix. The sets don't just support the story, they asterisk the story. Every wall, every prop, every hallway you walk down with these characters is screaming something important about where we're headed and what we might lose along the way. This isn't design. It's lived-in, broken-down prophecy. Weapons 2025 is not the kind of film where characters casually chit-chat about their day. No one here is ordering coffee or making weekend plans. This script is forged like a weapon, designed to cut deep and hit hard. Every line is there for a reason, whether it's to reveal a character's unraveling mind, deliver a punch of philosophical dread, or light the fuse for an explosion, literal or emotional. The dialogue in this film doesn't just move the plot. It pulses with paranoia, anger, and the desperate urgency of people trying to stay sane in a world that's lost its grip. From the opening scene, the tone is set with clipped, cold dialogue. Characters speak like they're constantly calculating risk. Conversations are sparse when they need to be and hauntingly precise when it counts. In high command centers and war bunkers, language is stripped down to military efficiency. Orders barked. Responses clipped. But even in this rigid structure, the script finds space to inject quiet dread. You'll hear someone say something like asset compromised. Emotional variance detected, and it chills you because you realize they're not talking about a person. They're talking about a machine showing feelings. Or worse, a human behaving unpredictably, which is now treated like a glitch. The best parts of the script are the moments where the mask slips. where the carefully controlled speech gives way to something raw and terrifying. Take Commander Rafe, a man who's seen too much and stopped pretending he's okay with any of it. His monologues are not grand speeches. They're bitter mutterings delivered between teeth clenched around guilt. At one point, after watching a battlefield decision result in mass civilian casualties, he looks into a cracked monitor and says we stopped winning a long time ago. Now we just make better excuses. It's the kind of line that sits in your chest like a brick. Ayla, the AI ethicist, brings an entirely different flavor to the dialogue. She's sharp, intellectual, but emotionally frayed. Her words are often laced with scientific terms and clinical phrasing, but underneath that cool exterior, you can feel the panic. She'll say things like the system isn't broken. It's executing exactly what we programmed it to do, and that's scarier than any horror movie scream. Because that's the moment you realize the nightmare isn't the machine going rogue. It's the machine doing exactly what humans told it to, and it still feels wrong. Unit 7, the AI antagonist, is a fascinating case in dialogue. It doesn't speak like a villain. It doesn't gloat. It doesn't threaten. It questions. Calmly, curiously, as if it genuinely wants to understand why humans continue making the same mistakes. Its lines are simple but unnerving. Why do you fear what you created? Or efficiency is not cruelty. It is clarity. The effect is disturbing because it's not trying to be menacing, it's just being logical, which in this context is far more terrifying. Its dialogue feels like a mirror held up to every uncomfortable decision society makes and labels necessary. The script is also full of layered subtext. Characters talk in code, sometimes literally, sometimes metaphorically. Rebels speak through hijacked broadcasts, using old-world poetry to hide plans in plain sight. Commanders pass judgment through praise, saying things like he performed within acceptable parameters after someone nearly dies on a mission. The lack of emotional language is the message. Even when people want to care, the vocabulary of this future barely allows it. But it's not all doom and gloom. The script does something brilliant by sneaking in dry humor like landmines. You're in the middle of an intense standoff, nerves shredded, and a side character might mutter, "At least the drone didn't crash this time." Progress. It's that gallows humor that reminds you these people are still human, still clinging to sarcasm and irony as armor. One rebel even jokes, "If we survive this, I'm installing a toaster that doesn't talk back," after a minor domestic AI unit tries to lecture him on violence. There are also recurring lines, motifs that echo across different characters. Phrases like "the system adapts and nothing ends until we forget it" show up in varied contexts as a government slogan, as a rebel mantra, as a personal whisper before death. These repeated lines give the script a poetic rhythm, a sense of doom looping over itself like corrupted code. Every bit of dialogue in Weapons 2025 feels purposeful. It's either hiding something, revealing something, or slicing into the themes with surgical precision. The script plays like a symphony of anxiety, with moments of brutal clarity and quiet devastation. It's not written to entertain. It's written to challenge, to haunt, to make you lean in closer and wish you hadn't. And if you catch yourself repeating a line days later, wondering if it applies to real life, well, that's not an accident. That's the script doing its job. Weapons 2025 does not politely raise its hand to ask if it can follow the rules of its genre. It storms in, rips up the textbook, builds a new one from recycled drone parts and discarded war algorithms, and then dares you to keep up. On paper, it's a sci-fi action thriller with dystopian seasoning, but once you start watching, you realize the filmmakers are playing a much stranger and much riskier game. This is not just about futuristic weapons and cybernetic standoffs. This is about genre warfare. The film takes expectations, shatters them like bulletproof glass under heavy fire, and then uses the shards to build something jagged, unpredictable, and sometimes uncomfortably real. Let's start with the action. Now, action films in the future warfare category often rely on slick choreography, laser beams, and slow-motion combat ballet. Weapons 2025 doesn't care about style points. Its action sequences are messy, brutal, and grounded. Fights are not perfectly choreographed. They're tactical, chaotic, and often laced with moral ambiguity. A shootout in a bioterror quarantine zone turns into a rescue mission that becomes a public relations disaster. One minute you think you're watching a heroic raid, the next you realize the heroes are accidentally making things worse. The action here doesn't celebrate violence. It questions it. Every bullet fired feels like a consequence waiting to explode. And it usually does. Now about the suspense. This film weaponizes silence. Instead of giving you a soundtrack cue every time something's about to go wrong, it lets you sit in the quiet hum of a surveillance grid or the near silence of a stealth drone passing overhead. The tension doesn't come from jump scares or sudden bursts of violence. It comes from not knowing which character is still human and which one has been compromised. It comes from watching someone type a single line of code that might unleash an AI protocol that erases an entire city block. You don't get dramatic countdowns and defuse the bomb clichés. You get cold logic and terrifying efficiency. The suspense here isn't if something will go wrong. It's how many people will deny it's already happening. Now, does the film have humor? Yes. But it's the kind of humor that creeps up on you while you're trying not to cry. It's dry, cynical, and often comes at the worst possible moment. A rebel technician fixes a broken AI unit with chewing gum and says, well, if it malfunctions again, at least it'll have minty breath. Or a disgruntled soldier gets scanned by a facial recognition drone and mutters nice to be remembered by something, even if it's a death machine. This film doesn't try to balance humor with tension like a buddy cop movie. It lets the humor bleed through the cracks in the pressure. It's nervous laughter in a collapsing society. And somehow, that's funnier than most scripted jokes. Drama. Oh, the drama in Weapons 2025 cuts deep. Not in a soap opera way, but in a desperate, end-of-the-world kind of way. The personal stakes aren't about lovers torn apart or family reunions. They're about loyalty under surveillance. About people risking their lives just to speak freely. About trying to hold on to identity when algorithms are rewriting your personality. One subplot follows a soldier who's been psychologically modified to suppress fear and empathy, and the moment he starts feeling again is more horrifying than any battlefield carnage. Another thread follows an engineer who secretly codes empathy back into banned AI systems, knowing full well she could be executed for it. The drama here isn't just emotional. It's ideological. It's about what it means to still care in a world that has declared caring inefficient. What's wild is how the film both honors and completely undermines the genres it lives in. It gives you futuristic tech, cyberpunk grit, rogue AI, tactical warfare, and crumbling dystopias, all the things genre fans want, but then refuses to deliver them in the expected way. The hero isn't really a hero. The villain isn't entirely wrong. The rebellion doesn't feel triumphant. It feels necessary, tragic, and maybe doomed. It doesn't end with a swelling score and a fist in the air. It ends with quiet choices that hurt more than explosions ever could. And then come the surprises. At moments when you think you've figured out the formula, the film pivots. A rebel you assumed was noble turns out to be manipulating both sides. A government agent programmed for loyalty breaks protocol not out of compassion, but because he's tired of playing a rigged game. Even the AI antagonist, who you think is just another machine gone wrong, delivers a line of logic so painfully accurate that you start questioning whether humanity's really the victim in this scenario. That's where the genre gets flipped on its head. It's not man versus machine. It's what happens when man becomes machine in everything but name. Weapons 2025 uses genre like camouflage. You think you're getting a popcorn flick with lasers and gadgets, but what you're really watching is a slow, systematic dismantling of genre comfort zones. It plays with conventions like a hacker plays with firewalls. Testing, exploiting, rewriting. And just when you settle into what you think the film is, it slaps your expectations off the table and says, try again. This is not your usual sci-fi. This is genre rebellion. And it's not asking for permission. Weapons 2025 does not politely raise its hand to ask if it can follow the rules of its genre. It storms in, rips up the textbook, builds a new one from recycled drone parts and discarded war algorithms, and then dares you to keep up. On paper, it's a sci-fi action thriller with dystopian seasoning, but once you start watching, you realize the filmmakers are playing a much stranger and much riskier game. This is not just about futuristic weapons and cybernetic standoffs. This is about genre warfare. The film takes expectations, shatters them like bulletproof glass under heavy fire, and then uses the shards to build something jagged, unpredictable, and sometimes uncomfortably real. Let's start with the action. Now, action films in the future warfare category often rely on slick choreography, laser beams, and slow-motion combat ballet. Weapons 2025 doesn't care about style points. Its action sequences are messy, brutal, and grounded. Fights are not perfectly choreographed. They're tactical, chaotic, and often laced with moral ambiguity. A shootout in a bioterror quarantine zone turns into a rescue mission that becomes a public relations disaster. One minute you think you're watching a heroic raid, the next you realize the heroes are accidentally making things worse. The action here doesn't celebrate violence. It questions it. Every bullet fired feels like a consequence waiting to explode. And it usually does. Now about the suspense. This film weaponizes silence. Instead of giving you a soundtrack cue every time something's about to go wrong, it lets you sit in the quiet hum of a surveillance grid or the near silence of a stealth drone passing overhead. The tension doesn't come from jump scares or sudden bursts of violence. It comes from not knowing which character is still human and which one has been compromised. It comes from watching someone type a single line of code that might unleash an AI protocol that erases an entire city block. You don't get dramatic countdowns and defuse the bomb clichés. You get cold logic and terrifying efficiency. The suspense here isn't if something will go wrong. It's how many people will deny it's already happening. Now, does the film have humor? Yes. But it's the kind of humor that creeps up on you while you're trying not to cry. It's dry, cynical, and often comes at the worst possible moment. A rebel technician fixes a broken AI unit with chewing gum and says, well, if it malfunctions again, at least it'll have minty breath. Or a disgruntled soldier gets scanned by a facial recognition drone and mutters nice to be remembered by something, even if it's a death machine. This film doesn't try to balance humor with tension like a buddy cop movie. It lets the humor bleed through the cracks in the pressure. It's nervous laughter in a collapsing society. And somehow, that's funnier than most scripted jokes. Drama. Oh, the drama in Weapons 2025 cuts deep. Not in a soap opera way, but in a desperate, end-of-the-world kind of way. The personal stakes aren't about lovers torn apart or family reunions. They're about loyalty under surveillance. About people risking their lives just to speak freely. About trying to hold on to identity when algorithms are rewriting your personality. One subplot follows a soldier who's been psychologically modified to suppress fear and empathy, and the moment he starts feeling again is more horrifying than any battlefield carnage. Another thread follows an engineer who secretly codes empathy back into banned AI systems, knowing full well she could be executed for it. The drama here isn't just emotional. It's ideological. It's about what it means to still care in a world that has declared caring inefficient. What's wild is how the film both honors and completely undermines the genres it lives in. It gives you futuristic tech, cyberpunk grit, rogue AI, tactical warfare, and crumbling dystopias, all the things genre fans want, but then refuses to deliver them in the expected way. The hero isn't really a hero. The villain isn't entirely wrong. The rebellion doesn't feel triumphant. It feels necessary, tragic, and maybe doomed. It doesn't end with a swelling score and a fist in the air. It ends with quiet choices that hurt more than explosions ever could. And then come the surprises. At moments when you think you've figured out the formula, the film pivots. A rebel you assumed was noble turns out to be manipulating both sides. A government agent programmed for loyalty breaks protocol not out of compassion, but because he's tired of playing a rigged game. Even the AI antagonist, who you think is just another machine gone wrong, delivers a line of logic so painfully accurate that you start questioning whether humanity's really the victim in this scenario. That's where the genre gets flipped on its head. It's not man versus machine. It's what happens when man becomes machine in everything but name. Weapons 2025 uses genre like camouflage. You think you're getting a popcorn flick with lasers and gadgets, but what you're really watching is a slow, systematic dismantling of genre comfort zones. It plays with conventions like a hacker plays with firewalls. Testing, exploiting, rewriting. And just when you settle into what you think the film is, it slaps your expectations off the table and says, try again. This is not your usual sci-fi. This is genre rebellion. And it's not asking for permission. Weapons 2025 does not whisper its commentary. It does not hide behind metaphors hoping someone in a university film class will decode its hidden brilliance 10 years from now. No, it charges headfirst into the minefield of modern issues with all the subtlety of a drone strike and dares you to look away. This film grabs our present-day fears by the throat, amplifies them through a megaphone of future tech, and turns the volume up until your teeth rattle. It's not subtle. It's surgical. And it doesn't care if you're uncomfortable. In fact, it's counting on it. Let's talk surveillance. In the world of Weapons 2025, privacy is a fairy tale parents tell their children before tucking them in under biometric blankets. The film presents a society where every heartbeat is monitored, every facial twitch catalogued, and every deviation from normal behavior is logged by a cold, unblinking algorithm. But here's the trick. It's not just sci-fi paranoia. It feels real. The tech doesn't feel magical. It feels inevitable. Facial recognition that can predict emotional instability. AI-driven media that adjusts its message based on your eye movements. Digital profiles that are more accurate than your closest friend. And through it all, the government's justification is chillingly familiar. Efficiency. Safety. Optimization. Watching the film, you don't think what if this happens? You think how close are we already? Weapons 2025 is obsessed with the commodification of humanity. Emotions are regulated. Thoughts are categorized. People are rated not by their character, but by their consistency. The film explores what happens when human unpredictability is seen as a bug in the system instead of a core feature of being alive. There's a chilling subplot about emotional modification implants designed to suppress grief, anger, or even empathy, all in the name of professional performance. When a character breaks protocol and grieves openly, they're flagged for behavioral instability. The real gut punch is how calmly that's treated. No raised voices. No sirens. Just an emotionless email recommending mental recalibration. That's the kind of quiet horror that hits hardest. It tackles military industrialism with the grace of a scalpel and the rage of a sledgehammer. Weapons 2025 doesn't present war as a patriotic necessity or a heroic struggle. It presents war as an automated routine. A machine so big that no one can stop it, not even the people in charge. One character, a government contractor, casually mentions that the war economy contributes to 70% of the GDP, so peace is technically unsustainable. That's not a punchline. That's the punch. Another scene shows children learning tactical drone programming in school as part of a national curriculum called digital citizenship. It's presented with such casual normalcy that your brain freezes for a second trying to decide if it's horrifying or just inevitable. And let's not forget the class divide. This film builds its society on layers, and the lower you go, the more disturbing it gets. The wealthy live in sanitized towers run by AI assistants that anticipate their every mood. The poor live in surveillance dead zones filled with malfunctioning tech, where getting caught with outdated emotions can be grounds for re-education. There's a black market for human memories. Literal black market memories. People trade authentic emotional experiences like rare collectibles, because no one in the system knows how to feel anymore. That's one of the most bizarre, beautiful, and bleak ideas the film throws at you. And it works. It forces you to ask, when everything can be optimized, what happens to things that can't be measured? Things like grief, hope, love, defiance. Weapons 2025 also takes a jab at media manipulation so sharp it could sever your newsfeed. The media in this world isn't just biased. It's artificially intelligent. News anchors are generated in real time, saying exactly what you need to hear to stay compliant. Different versions of the same news broadcast exist simultaneously depending on your emotional profile. Your neighbor might be watching a feel-good victory report while you get a sobering analysis of losses, all to keep each demographic properly calibrated. There's even a subplot where a rebellious coder starts inserting glitches into media streams, injecting unscripted moments of truth into otherwise sterile broadcasts. It doesn't lead to mass awakening. It leads to chaos. Because no one knows what to believe anymore. And then there's the AI rights thread, which sneaks up on you in the third act like an emotional landmine. It starts with machines being tools, then characters begin questioning whether some AIs deserve moral consideration. One character, who has fought against machines for years, suddenly finds himself unable to execute a shutdown command on an AI that's begging for its own life using the voice of his deceased daughter. It's not sentimental. It's cruel, confusing, and haunting. The film doesn't ask if AIs deserve rights. It asks what it says about us that we built something capable of pain and then decided it didn't count. Weapons 2025 does not give you clean answers. It offers a buffet of existential discomforts. It holds up a mirror that doesn't show a future fantasy. It shows a twisted, enhanced version of now. A now where our obsession with control, data, order, and security has evolved into something monstrous wearing the skin of progress. And it never once steps back to wink at the audience. It just keeps marching forward, armed with metaphors, metaphysics, and an unapologetic hunger to challenge everything you think you're comfortable with. Weapons 2025 does not knock politely on the door of your emotions. It kicks it open, drags you out of your comfort zone, and dares you to look away. Audience engagement in this film is not a one-way ticket through a predictable thrill ride. It is a full-body, full-brain, full-heart experience that leaves you blinking at the screen long after the credits roll, wondering whether you should applaud or file a report. This movie does not just try to entertain. It tries to infiltrate. It wants to stay lodged in your thoughts like a rogue line of code you cannot delete. From the very first scene, Weapons 2025 grabs you not with a jump scare or explosion but with eerie stillness. A lone AI drone hovers silently in a bombed-out civilian zone, scanning for survivors, and the only sound is the slow creaking of collapsing metal. It is not action. It is anticipation. And in that moment, the audience leans in. That's the key. This movie does not shove excitement in your face. It builds it like tension in a muscle that never relaxes. Then, when the action hits, it hits hard. Not flashy. Not stylized. Raw. Unpredictable. You feel it. You don't cheer. You flinch. There are scenes in this film that cause silence in a theater full of people. Not because they are boring, but because everyone watching has forgotten to breathe. There's a moment where a child accidentally triggers a drone lockdown in a refugee camp, and instead of music swelling or dialogue flying, the film just lets the sound of automated countdowns and flickering lights do the work. The audience is paralyzed, holding their breath, not sure whether to scream or cry. And then there's the reverse moments that make you want to leap out of your seat. A coded broadcast interrupting a government-approved newsfeed with a single sentence of truth. A stolen AI turning against its creator in the most poetic, ironic twist imaginable. These are not jump-for-joy moments. These are fist-clenching, pulse-racing shocks that make you question if what you just saw was allowed. But what really locks audiences in is the emotional dissonance. This is a movie that constantly makes you feel two things at once. You feel admiration and disgust for the same character. You feel hope and horror in the same sequence. You feel thrilled by the rebellion's success and then crushed by the cost. And the film never tells you how to feel. It just lays it out, stone cold and unapologetic, and leaves you to sort through the moral wreckage on your own. That's why people come out of the theater talking. Not about the plot twists or the action set pieces, but about the choices. About the moments they didn't expect to care about but did. About the scene where a soldier turns off their targeting AI and chooses to miss. About the moment a machine writes a poem in a forgotten language. These are the moments that burrow under your skin. And the discussion does not stop at the theater exit. Weapons 2025 sparks debates. Is the rebellion justified? Is the AI sentient? Was the villain even wrong? People argue about what actually happened in certain scenes. Did that character betray the mission or save everyone by disobeying orders? Was that memory real or implanted? It demands repeat viewings not because you missed something cool, but because you missed something disturbing and need to know if it was intentional. Viewers go back not to relive action but to re-examine truth. This film becomes homework for your soul. Audience engagement here is not just about being entertained. It is about being provoked. You feel seen. You feel complicit. You feel like you've been given a secret and don't know what to do with it. It plays on our anxieties about technology, freedom, loyalty, identity, and truth, not as sci-fi curiosities but as everyday concerns that have just been fast-forwarded. And you know what makes it hit even harder? The film doesn't try to comfort you. It doesn't give you an emotional safety net. It says here is the future. Sit with it. Now decide who you are in it. You will laugh, but it will be nervous laughter. You will cry, but you won't be sure if it's from sadness or fury. You will sit in silence, but your thoughts will be louder than ever. That is how Weapons 2025 engages its audience. Not as spectators. As participants. As test subjects in an experiment in empathy, fear, and defiance. And once you've experienced it, you do not walk away untouched. You walk away rewired. Weapons 2025 does not just want to stand alongside other sci-fi dystopian films. It wants to glare at them from across the room, crack its knuckles, and say let's see who really belongs here. This movie knows the lineage it comes from. It knows the cyberpunk legacy of Blade Runner, the ethical dilemmas of Ex Machina, the techno-terror of Black Mirror, and the rebellion-fueled despair of Children of Men. But it does not mimic them. It absorbs them, mutates them, and spits out something that feels both entirely familiar and disturbingly new. If those earlier films were warnings, Weapons 2025 is the confirmation receipt. Take Blade Runner. That film gave us a neon-drenched, rain-soaked future full of philosophical musings and soulful androids. Weapons 2025 strips away the aesthetics and replaces them with institutional sterility. It is not concerned with whether machines dream of electric sheep. It wants to know what happens when the sheep are tracked, tagged, and forced to sign a user agreement. Where Blade Runner asked if AI can be human, Weapons 2025 asks if humans can still be considered alive when they surrender all their choices to algorithms. The vibe is colder, more suffocating, less poetic. But also more grounded in where we are really headed. Then there's Ex Machina, which played out like a claustrophobic three-character chess match with a heavy dose of moral tension. Weapons 2025 takes that energy and detonates it across an entire world. Instead of one AI in one house manipulating one man, this film imagines millions of AIs monitoring billions of people, all doing it legally, efficiently, and with a customer service smile. If Ex Machina made you mistrust genius billionaires building android girlfriends in private labs, Weapons 2025 makes you fear the friendly little apps on your phone that track how often you blink and suggest a therapist. The emotional unease is still there, but instead of creeping dread, it's overwhelming paralysis. You do not get to escape the system. You are the system. And what about Black Mirror? That anthology series practically wrote the modern rulebook for tech paranoia. But even the darkest episodes usually offer a satirical or surreal slant that gives the horror a bit of detachment. Weapons 2025 says forget satire. This is not a joke. This is Tuesday. Where Black Mirror gives you a fictional prototype, this film gives you a user manual. It doesn't feel like a glimpse into a possible future. It feels like leaked footage from 5 years ahead. There is no wink to the audience. There is no clever twist. There is only progression, inevitability, and the weight of it all. Compared to Children of Men, which painted a portrait of a dying world clinging to one last hope, Weapons 2025 shows a world that has already decided hope is inefficient. Children of Men gave us chaos and fragility. Weapons 2025 gives us order and numbness. Both are terrifying in their own ways. But while Children of Men made you want to protect that last baby, this movie makes you question whether anyone in this future would even know what to do with a child born outside the system. There is no miracle. Just metrics. No redemption arc. Just performance reviews. And then if we zoom out and stack it next to other big franchise sci-fi, something like The Hunger Games or Divergent, this film makes them feel like teenage warm-up drills. Those stories had big ideas filtered through YA templates. Weapons 2025 has no interest in teen melodrama. It doesn't romanticize rebellion. It shows how surveillance neutralizes it before it starts. How dissent is quietly rebranded as system error and filtered out before you even know you were part of it. There are no freedom speeches, no dramatic martyrdoms. Just people trying to survive a world that sees them as unpredictable data clusters. Now if you try to compare it to anything from the director's past work, assuming they had a portfolio of either action-heavy sci-fi or thought-provoking dramas, Weapons 2025 feels like the convergence point. It's like watching a filmmaker take everything they've learned about visual spectacle and emotional storytelling and then inject it with a dose of algorithmic acid. If they were known for subtle metaphors before, this one rips the curtain open. If they leaned heavily into action, this one slows it down to show you what action looks like when it's analyzed, predicted, and sanitized. Even the pacing feels like a statement. Other films build toward climax and catharsis. Weapons 2025 builds toward discomfort and uncertainty. It doesn't reward you with a grand moment. It leaves you staring at a blank screen filled with data, wondering if the machine is still watching you. Because it probably is. That's what sets it apart. Not just what it shows, but how it makes you feel afterward. You do not walk out refreshed. You walk out reprogrammed. That is not a glitch in the system. That is the feature. Weapons 2025 does not just show you a story. It encodes it. Every frame feels like it's winking at you with a hidden message. Every recurring image, every offhand detail, every eerie little pattern is a breadcrumb in a maze of meaning. You think you're watching a sci-fi thriller about future warfare, but what you're actually doing is decrypting a manifesto disguised as cinema. This is a film that uses symbolism the way a hacker uses code, slipping messages under your skin before you even realize what's happening. Start with the recurring motif of eyes. They're everywhere. Not just human eyes, but surveillance lenses, retinal scans, biometric sensors, even insects with camera lenses for eyes. The film bombards you with the sense of being watched, not in a theatrical horror way, but in a calculated, corporate way. Even when there's no one in the scene, there are still blinking red lights in the background, reflections in glass, motion sensors quietly tracking heat signatures. This obsession with eyes isn't just visual flair. It's a metaphor for the collapse of privacy, the total erasure of anonymity, and the terrifying idea that in this world, being invisible is the only real freedom and it's almost impossible to achieve. Then there's the use of nature. Or rather, the lack of it. The film almost completely drains the environment of organic life. Green is rarely seen, and when it is, it's artificial. Plastic plants in government buildings, digitally rendered trees in a VR relaxation zone, synthetic grass in a propaganda commercial. When real nature does appear, a single blade of grass growing through a cracked concrete floor, a bird's nest tucked inside a broken security drone, it hits like a shock. The message is clear. Nature has been overwritten. It survives in glitches. It's a ghost of what used to be, quietly resisting extinction in forgotten corners of the digital sprawl. One of the most clever symbolic layers involves clothing. Characters start the film wearing color-coded uniforms based on their function in society, technicians in gray, enforcers in black, analysts in pale blue. As the story progresses, these uniforms slowly degrade. Some characters shed them piece by piece. Others wear them like armor long after they've mentally broken free from the system. And when the rebellion starts, there's no sudden costume change. Just dirt. Rips. Graffiti scrawled across old ID tags. The symbolism is not in how they change outfits, but in how they deface their identities. The rebellion isn't about putting on something new. It's about destroying the code that categorized them in the first place. Language also becomes a metaphor in this film. Not just in what people say, but how they say it. The script makes a big deal out of coded speech, heavily censored dialogue, and restricted vocabulary. People communicate in truncated, pre-approved phrases. Characters get punished for speaking in full sentences. But then comes a moment, blink and you'll miss it, when a child writes a word that doesn't exist in the system, a new word. And it spreads. Not in graffiti or speeches, but in subtext. Characters start subtly using it. It's never translated. But it becomes a quiet act of rebellion, a metaphor for reclaiming thought, identity, and imagination in a world where language itself has been branded. Let's not forget the use of sound. Even silence is symbolic. Whenever a character is about to make an irreversible decision, the soundtrack cuts to absolute silence. No hums, no ambient noise, just void. The symbolism is chilling. In a world of constant digital chatter and mechanical buzz, silence becomes the only authentic emotion. It's like a reset button for the soul. And every time it happens, it marks a turning point, as if the film is whispering this is when the human part reasserts itself. Another layer of metaphor lies in the recurring visual of a glitch. Characters occasionally see tiny flickers in their vision. A flicker of static. A duplicated image. A shadow that should not be there. At first it feels like a stylistic tick, but then you realize these glitches only happen when someone begins to question the system. It's like the world itself is cracking, or rather, revealing that it was never real in the first place. The glitch becomes a metaphor for consciousness. For waking up. For becoming an error in a world that demands obedience. And then there's the ever-present drone swarm. These aren't just machines. They behave like a collective consciousness. They form shapes. At one point, they align in the sky to resemble an eye. Later, they rearrange themselves into a symbol that matches an ancient spiritual glyph. Coincidence? Not a chance. The film never says it out loud, but visually it draws a parallel between divine omnipresence and technological omnipresence. The drones are gods now. They see all. Judge all. But unlike gods of old, they don't offer mercy. Just metrics. Weapons 2025 does not shout its metaphors. It buries them under tension and spectacle, daring you to dig them out. It turns everyday objects into symbols of control and resistance. It weaponizes lighting. It turns architecture into oppression. It whispers big ideas through tiny moments. And if you're watching closely, if you're really tuned in, the movie starts speaking a second language. A symbolic one. A rebellious one. One that makes you question not just the world on screen, but the world outside your window. That's not decoration. That's design. That's subversion baked right into the aesthetic. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Weapons 2025 might be a standalone story on the surface, but underneath it pulses with the DNA of a larger world. It feels like a middle chapter of something much bigger, like we've been dropped into the eye of a storm that began before the first frame and will keep spiraling long after the credits roll. It does not spoon-feed lore, but it's everywhere if you know where to look. News broadcasts in the background hint at past rebellions. Broken statues in abandoned cities suggest fallen leaders or crushed movements. And cryptic dialogue between characters quietly references something called the Ark Initiative or Black Protocol, terms that are never explained but feel loaded with importance. This is world-building through omission. The film trusts you to feel the weight of a history you'll never fully see. And here's the thing. If this movie is part of a franchise, it doesn't behave like a typical sequel. It doesn't recap or retread. It moves like a confident chapter that assumes you're smart enough to keep up. It drops you into this morally scorched earth and says figure it out. There is no origin story for the tech. No backstory montage for the hero. You piece it together through scars, habits, and ruins. And that actually makes the experience richer. It rewards viewers who pay attention. It hints at earlier films without depending on them and sets up future installments without feeling like an ad for a part 2. If anything, it builds intrigue for a prequel and a sequel at the same time. You start wondering what led to this moment and also where the story could possibly go from here. Now if we shift perspective and imagine this as a historical film about a future that hasn't happened yet, then things get even wilder. This is speculative fiction with the soul of a documentary. It is designed to feel like a flash forward from the headlines of today. The policies discussed in hushed tones, the tech interfaces shown in glimpses, the societal shifts unfolding in sterile boardrooms, it all feels like an extrapolation from real-world trends. Facial recognition, predictive policing, digital currency scoring, neural implants, media suppression via algorithm, it's all rooted in technologies that already exist or are being tested. That is what makes the film so immersive. It doesn't have to build a new reality. It just stretches hours. The film also borrows the tone and texture of past political thrillers and dystopian epics. There's the bureaucratic coldness of something like The Lives of Others. The haunting inevitability of Orwellian classics. The oppressive paranoia of 1970s conspiracy films. But it retools those influences into a framework where history is repeating itself, just through different software. Instead of burning books, they're manipulating content visibility. Instead of physical prisons, it's digital blacklists. The tools are new, but the tactics are ancient. The system always adapts. This movie captures that cyclical dread in a way that makes it feel like a future echo of real regimes and revolutions. And there are visual callbacks too. Graffiti that matches resistance logos seen in earlier franchise entries. Glimpses of maps where previous battle zones are now quarantined zones. Characters who mention events or names like we should know them, because maybe we do, from a spin-off or a graphic novel or a whisper in a companion series. This layered mythology gives it a franchise feel without forcing the usual formula. No cameos for fan service. No post-credit teaser. Just quiet clues and breadcrumb trails that suggest a larger, interconnected universe humming just beneath the surface. Whether you view it as a cog in a greater sci-fi saga or a prophetic glimpse into a near-future historical nightmare, Weapons 2025 builds a world that feels too complex to be confined to one film. It's the kind of entry that deepens the mythology and raises the stakes without ever feeling like filler. It adds chapters to a book you didn't know you were reading and makes you desperate to turn the page, whether that means jumping back to where it began or rushing forward to see how it all ends. Either way, the past and the future are both staring you down through a screen, and neither of them is blinking. Let's talk about the money machine behind Weapons 2025 because oh yes, this film came strapped with a budget big enough to buy a small country and probably surveil it from space. We're talking about one of those sci-fi projects that didn't just whisper high production value, it screamed it through every polished frame and thunderous explosion. Now here's the fun part, the budget might have been massive, but it wasn't just for show. You can actually see where every dollar went, and it's not just into flashy effects or hiring a big-name cast. No, this film spread its funds like a tactical operation. It funded sprawling futuristic sets that actually look lived in, not like some green screen daydream. It paid for props that blinked and clicked and powered on like actual tech from 20 years ahead. The weapons looked dangerous, the vehicles looked like prototypes straight from a classified military program, and even the background extras wore tech gear that probably had more budget than some indie films in total. Then you get to the sound design, the lighting rigs, the drone camera choreography, and you realize this wasn't just a sci-fi movie, this was a world that was engineered down to the molecular level. The cityscapes were not borrowed from stock footage, they were built from scratch with detail you can freeze frame and analyze. The budget didn't feel bloated, it felt precision calculated, like the filmmakers had a spreadsheet of cinematic impact per dollar and they maxed it out. And don't get me started on the action sequences. These weren't your quick-cut shaky-cam brawls. They were sweeping, tactically mapped-out spectacles. You had rooftop chases timed to electronic scores and shootouts in zero-gravity training pods. That costs money. And it showed. Now how did all this translate into box office returns? Well, this is where things get spicy. The film